Welcome to On the Front Lines. We are today with Gagan Sethi from Janvikas, and we're live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. We have Emma from Signable, who's live translating for us. Thank you so much, Gagan, for joining us.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure being with you, egomonk, and all friends who are listening.
Thank you. So today, Gagan is going to talk about the fragility of civil liberties in India. And Gagan has a small presentation for us. So I'm going to hand it over to Gagan before we start interacting with him.
So thank you really for inviting me on this, and also putting this subject here, because I think when you have these kind of pandemics, this is the time when we really have the test of civil liberties in any nation. I think the question that I really want to ask is: are we paying a price for not honoring the rules of the game as humankind? Um, and this pandemic comes every 100 years, and I think it's a time when humankind is reminded to live by the law of nature and not where they wish to control nature and other human beings. I think this is what I've learned in the last 30 days, that this pandemic has really obliterated and demolished egos of all kinds in this world, and also in India. I think it's also challenged the very concept of economic man as the driver, um, and and the whole idea of subjugation and violence, I think, is being punished by nature. This is how I see what's happening. Um, I think the other thing which I've been seeing, and we just saw before all this the Shaheen Bagh and all that happening. And I think that institutional religious identity based politics, um, which kills the spirit of freedom, and therefore the theory that it will deliver, that one man will deliver to us that ecstatic heights, is debunked, and therefore freedom of movement, expression, dissent, dialogue, all that is really being taken to task. We are all locked down, and then we are finding new ways to express ourselves. I want to attempt to deconstruct this above through some pictures. One picture which I always used in many of my this thing. This is a self-made man, and to me, this is really the core uh, of what civil liberties is. It's the self-made man as a sculpture that depicts a man carving himself and his future out of stone. And that's the right to choice, to self-determination, and building one's unique identity. And therefore, the core belief that individual history and experiences, both painful and joyous, are so sacrosanct. Um, to me, this picture really symbolizes the spirit of human beings, which cannot be taken for granted and which has to be allowed to fruition and not be suppressed. But then, I have this picture which tells us coming to India. And this I says that till I finish carving, you were a stone and I a sculptor. And now that I'm finished, you are God and I'm an untouchable. This lies where lies the whole essence of Indian society, where where the craftsmen, the labor, those who are actually producing, whether it's art, whether it's goods, um, they are the ones who run society. But when the product is finished, they become either Dalits, they go to their identities which are choiceless. I want to remind my viewers and my friends there, some of you are my friends, that just before all this was happening, two things are in very recent history: the Una Dalit flogging and the lynching of Pehlu Khan. These two, in a sense, tell us how Indian civil society, or the Indian state has been dealing with the civil liberties in our country. And therefore, I'm going to ask a question. I'm basically an atheist. Um, I don't believe in God, but at the moment, religious, institutional religion is all over. And that is, yeah, almost we are a theocratic state. Um, you have one state which is even run by a by a religious leader. Um, and therefore, I ask this question: those who believe in that institutional religion, will they ask this question? Is it time to apologize? And this is God punishing them? Is that the way they will look, or now they will go to science and rationality? Um, I also saw this building. There was a time when brutalist buildings were the order of the day, and it actually tells you um, the architecture of global inequality. Look at what is at the bottom, where today everybody lives with nothing. And then as you go middle class, upper middle class, and then you go up, this building is an amazing symbolism, the architecture of global inequality. And where millions are at the down, and there are fewer and fewer as you go up to the top, enjoying and looking from the to the beyond. I'm deliberately showing you these pictures because there's symbolism. We have to think of counter symbolism these days to the massive symbolism that exists otherwise in this nation, which legitimize the killing of civil liberties. Um, and therefore, I come to this word which I'm going to be using again and again is the curse. Those who believe in the institutional religion, will you call this a curse now? And if it is a curse, what is this curse of? It's the curse of inequality, represented by migrancy, farmer suicides, and women making women take the burden of 90% of all work. See the inequality where a worker will have to work for 22,000 odd years to earn what a CEO of an MNC makes in 1 year. It's ugly. And therefore, someone would have to curse this kind of a situation. And therefore, I quickly take you that, therefore, if this is a curse, because those who believe in those religious frameworks will have to look at this as a curse. And the curse really is what is a curse? A solemn utterance which invokes, just a minute, uh, utterance intended to invoke a supernatural power to inflict harm or punishment on someone or something. And then when you see what are the curses which we have put on ourselves, it is the practice of deep and unbridgeable inequality. It is when we maraud, mutate, and rape the environment. We practice discrimination, which I gave you an example. We practice slavery. I was in Ahmedabad last week trying to start some community kitchens for our some of the migrant labor, 5,000 migrant labor in just one zone. And there was these young boys from UP locked out in small 8 by 10 rooms, 15, 20 of them, all around a factory where the factory is closed. I thought of the Charles Dickens days of the first industrial revolution. It's still there, practice of slavery. And then, of course, the fake news and untruth. And then I get calls, what do we do with Dharavi? And I said, who made Dharavi? Again, you have young people who have no jobs. I think when what I say is to be is to have, it's taken over. All we need is a toy a day. We need to centralize governance and eulogize one person who knows it all. I mean, I wanted a prime minister who works and who supports states and districts and facilitates, not a not a god who tells me once in a week what we have to be all doing. These are times when you need to empower local communities. On the other hand, what we listen is one man giving sermon after sermon as to how we should behave. Is this civil liberties, or are we going back to some old theocratic state? And when public investment increases on defense and speed toys like rails rather than agriculture, education, and health, that's a curse. It will curse us. When you cannot enjoy silence or solitude, you're all the time wanting noise. When you multiply hate and love diminishes, and when justice is available to the rich and jails are filled three times the percentage of population of tribal Dalits, then you build an edifice of the building I showed you, which criminalizes poor and legitimizes poverty. So to me, civil liberty is an expression of freedom. Actually, my daughter singing, doing Kathak in front of what was being plastered all over Ahmedabad as a way to protest. And therefore, to me, civil liberty is an expression from subjugation to azadi. But azadi is a bad word because if you say azadi, you're an anti-national. And the quest for freedom and self-determination is the very idea of who a human being is. He wants to be free, but we want to subjugate him. I think the state and individual freedom is constantly in tension. And when you get into these pandemics, it's an excuse. You have a choice. Empower local communities or centralize and tell people what they have to do. Support, give them resources to design their own dealing of the pandemic, or just clamp down and use the police as a brutalizing force. Way back, and I use this also, this is Akama Devi was from a Brahmin family, but became a Jogan and a spiritual teacher to challenge the way people looked at women. She removed her clothes and walked naked from village to village, preaching against caste and gender discrimination. A Brahmin. Civil liberties is about fighting discrimination, even in the times of pandemic. Who are not getting food? Who are getting food? What are the migrants doing? How will they go back? Who's asking them? Nobody's consulting them. Some people sitting in Delhi are deciding how it will happen. You ask the state government, they say, we don't know. We are waiting for orders from top. Is this a time to wait for orders from top? I think those are questions which I am asking. I go ahead and just say, therefore, where should we be investing in? With children, in curiosity, creativity. Rather than that, what we are doing is just boxing them in the name of education. These are some of the children who come and explore themselves in our. We have a small project called the Conflictorium. But this is the time. Can we get children to look at creativity? This is the situation. Hate crimes increased by, and the graph will tell you all. Just last year, there were, I think, about 700 cases more of, of hate crimes. Are we investing in justice, or are we investing in speed trains? The district level Legal Service Authority Act is supposed to intervene. It doesn't even know it is its role in the pandemic. We have to remind it that it has a role to play. It has to go and find out the migrants. It has to go and link it up with food security. There, there are laws there, but everybody is waiting for orders from the top. And therefore, I I was philosophically looking at it, and you know, it was more of Hobbes who talked that a good state is an absolute monarchy. He argued that this most forcefully. His beliefs stem from the central tenet that Hobbes' natural philosophy that human beings are at their core selfish creatures. Is this what is finally designing our state? And therefore, civil liberties, if this is the design of the state and this is the way we want to think of the state is, and not a social contract, then will we ever have a government which will operationalize the law of nature much more in detailed legislation? But it cannot legislate that is not in the law of nature. And therefore, are we trying to prove Hobbes' right or dissent as per Locke is permitted? These are some of the questions which I am asking at a more philosophical level. And therefore, it comes to civil liberties is based on the rule of law. And at the bottom is the right to assemble, which the pandemic has taken away, an independent judiciary, access to justice, freedom of speech. And then you go up and you see the pandemic really supporting or giving the government a chance to take away the rights of people. And is that really what we should be? Or it's the other way around of respecting the rule of law, which was based on the values, is respecting diversity, is promoting self governance, and the economics is subservient to dignity and not the driver of, of humankind. And I'll maybe, and then therefore, here is from here to where. I think it's about focusing on decentralizing governance. It is the will of the people, by the people. This is a chance to reimagine our panchayats, support them, a district panchayat. The will of the people lies there. If it's in urban areas, it's the wards, support them. There are communities, even in a city like Ahmedabad, for almost 10 days, it's the communities in the local area which took care of the migrants. Till a point came, they said, we have no more. It's then that they approach civil society organizations. And he said, no food, cook your own food. He said, yeah, thank you. I mean, we are sick of eating food which somebody else designs and will give us. We are therefore running self-help community kitchens. The idea really is restore dignity. Dignity is precious. Killing dignity by using pandemics and lockdowns can be done far more sensitively if one has their eyes on the ground and we have decentralization of power. But when I look at the future, well, we are back to food and agriculture based economy. We will have to respect the farmer because your economies over the world, all those based on toys, is going to collapse. And therefore, respecting that food and agriculture based economy, supporting the farmer, saying because he's the one who's going to give food to the cities. I think this reimagining of the health based infrastructure. We had started with PHC, but where is the big public investment going? Big multi specialty hospitals treating barely 1% of the population. And the sub-center, public health needs investment. Lockdowns have to happen there. Quarantines have to happen there. Communities have to reimagine the way because this is going to go on for years. People are going to go in and out of COVID. And you can't keep a lockdown for 2 years. But you need to reimagine the health infrastructure. You need people to start, communities to start owning up their own health infrastructure, and which comes to technology. There are enabling technologies and there are subjugating technologies. So, what we are doing today is using really an enabling technology to communicate, but there are technologies which subjugate. I think we'll have to reject those and not allow them to come back into the market space. I think primary vocational education has to be rethought. We will have to look at sub-regional markets. I'm already getting examples of people saying, when food has to be given, let's buy directly from the farmer. Can the women self-help group start making masks? If we are going to be setting up quarantines, we need beds. Can the local carpenter be making the beds? I think sub-regional based thinking and supporting resources, which therefore comes to what really was, I think, the killer in Indian history was when we went into the GST the way we went into. Taxation has to be decentralized. You have to share and give the money, not first take it to Delhi and then apportion it back. This money has to be in the hands. The first, I mean, it's like the Swiss system, beautiful. You pay more taxes in your village and your district, your canton, than you pay directly taxes to the government. Here, we are running the other way around. 120 crore people first giving money which goes to Delhi and then distributed based on what one man thinks how it should be distributed, which then uses political economy. And therefore, again, we say just clamping down on human ability to think and a few people thinking for everybody. And the other thing which I think we'll start respecting human hands. I think all of you are cooking back to basics. I think we'll start respecting that human hands includes craftsperson, artists, should be valued more than the white collared middlemen who are only making money out of exchange of services. And of course, we'll have to slow down. Speed and time are not commodities for subjugation, but to enjoy humankind's ability to express themselves and to be free. Yeah, and therefore, to me, these are the five things which I have learned. Listen to people, respect people, empower people, trust local systems, and decentralize. And therefore, if data is at the bottom, convert it to wisdom and not use it to subjugate communities. Yeah, Rishabh.
Thank you so much, Gagan, for this illuminating presentation. To all our viewers, feel free to drop in comments and questions, and we will be sure to ask Gagan those questions. Um, I would like to start by asking, we've had a number of speakers on this webinar speaking on the economy, speaking on solidarity, uh, speaking on how this is not a problem of one institution or one part of society. But the fundamental underlying idea of all of this is justice. Are we being just to the people who are struggling by imposing the kind of lockdown that we've imposed, by imposing the kind of rules that we've imposed, and have we failed the weakest sections of our society by forgetting the idea of justice?
But I'll just give you one example. I have a law center in Amreli, which then operates in Jafrabad, which is has the on the coast, and we have a company there which was part of a foreign collaboration producing kitchen equipment, modernized kitchen equipment in collaboration with some Korean. It had 5,000 workers whom they, when all this was happening, wanted to go back and said, no, 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 don't go back. March happened and the lockdown happened, and the owner of the company just locked it all and ran away with 5,000 of them all on the periphery, with just one, two people managing the factory. My lawyers, who these people had approached, said, we have not received our March wages. We complained. He went and himself talked to the labor. He said, I don't have the money. He said, please talk to your this thing. Oh, they are sitting somewhere else. But he said, March wages are right. Actually, the government GR says April also they are supposed to pay. But because most of them are daily wages, they get out of that. We actually negotiated that they pay at least 40%. 40% of what? Of a normal medium wage of about 12 to 14,000. All migrants who send 60% of it at home. Now, we thought we had done a great job by just getting them at least 40%. And then we got the government to give them some ration kits. But is this how you suddenly lock down and leave people in the lurch and then not even be able to provide them their monthly salary? This is unjust. This may be legal or illegal is issue. This is unjust. And we will keep fighting the legalities and illegalities of it. But imagine how many families are affected by this. They want to go back, they don't want to go back. We are doing a survey. Some want to go back, some don't want to go back. They say, what will you go back and do? We are not listening. We are not respecting. We are not, therefore, we are not able to provide what is called a framework of justice. Justice can only happen when there are people who are listening.
We have an elaborate constitution, one of the most celebrated constitutions in the world. Um, and it was framed with the idea of justice, liberty, equality, fraternity, and within that, to sort of limit the power of politics, we had countervailing institutions. These institutions are central to our democracy, has been told to us several times. But why are these central to our democracy? And why is the principle of justice so inherent, embedded to them?
No, I think this. I mean, you're right. The power of of governance, say, separate powers. But it's also, for example, executive, judiciary, and the state in terms of governance. They're separate. But when one does not respect or wants to control the other and not allow dissent, I think the critical this thing is we want to respect other institutions. We want to kill them. The and the Supreme Court Chief Justice has cried in public, saying they are being stifled. They're not allowed to function. I think this is a pathetic state, and we are talking of the Supreme Court. I know, and we work at the ground level at Justice. We have about 200 lawyers working with us, um, and we know the pathetic conditions of of the lower judiciary. They're not given. I mean, let me give you an example. I've been privy to the state of Gujarat for the last maybe 45 years. I came here as a young man from Delhi and then became a Gujarati now by years of being here. I remember seeing the second chief minister, Hitendra Desai, who used to live next to my house. And his security was one pilot of a motorcycle and an ambassador car, and in which he used to travel. And they used to that pilot was that motorcycle which was written pilot on top, and he would wade through. After 8 chief ministers, when the last chief minister of Gujarat went to Delhi, and as chief minister, his security drill was that he would travel in 18 black Scorpio jeeps with an armored car at the back, with an ambulance at the back, and a helicopter on top. This was the transition of how a chief minister's security drill changes. Why? How did this happen? How do you have a state and people who run the state more and more frightened of people? What have they done that they have to protect themselves, and we have to spend millions and millions of crores and crores of rupees to protect them? Somewhere they are not in sync with public space. Is that the reason, or is there something else? Or they are enjoying power at a level which is ugly, and therefore they are scared of people. They are scared, and then they will, of course, say, "We are scared of terrorism. We are scared of globalization." But you allowed all that. Did, rather than pushing and investing in lower judiciary, in institutions at the ground, in setting up Nyay Panchayats, you want to build edifices like the building I showed you. So you have inverted the very concept of democracy by usurping more and more power and centralizing that. That was not the idea of the constitution.
So over time, clearly, India has one of the most complex bureaucratic systems, and a number of institutions to support that kind of bureaucracy. But do you think over time they've not met pace with the aspirations of our population?
Yeah, but you know what is there on your screen? Those who listen are loved. I have I can give you examples of good district collectors. One good collector who listens, who respects, who empowers, who trusts, and who decentralizes is loved. On the other hand, one who does not listen, who disrespects, who disempowers, and who thinks he is he is God of that district, and who centralizes, and then you see the whole thing going up, is is a terror, and therefore he will need a bigger police force. So the point really is, what was the job of bureaucracy? Was to listen. I keep, to me, these are the five tenets. These are the five tenets even for NGOs. These are the five tenets for those who are in funding agencies. Are you listening, or are you telling people? The whole idea is that, the middle, what I call the white collared middlemen, who think computers will provide the solution. 120 crores computers are not going to tell you how to solve it. It has to be we are how many hundreds of nations put together. So you need a decentralized system of governance. I think we have been talking of electoral reforms. We are talking of state funding electoral reforms. We are How much money is being spent on elections? I think these are questions to ask. And automatically, if we put those in place, you will see that you will empower communities. People will have to will have to go back to people and be accountable after 5 years.
Yet, world over, Gagan, we've been seeing more and more centralization of power. There was a period when decentralization was considered the buzzword. We had the Panchayati Raj Act, the 73rd, 74th amendments. But world over, we see the emergence of the supreme leader. It is not a new phenomena. It doesn't seem like it's a limited phenomena. And therefore, do you feel that as human beings, we want something different, and that this system of decentralization or this effort to decentralize has failed?
No, I think it's simply this. And I think if you got what I was presenting, there are two types of technologies. There are enablers and there are subjugators. So when technology is used to subjugate, you will therefore continue, you will absorb, and you will become more powerful and centralized. The same computer can empower, the same computer can subjugate. You can collect data, you can listen to everybody's phone calls, you can listen to crack everybody's email. These are technologies which then used to subjugate. The state can become so overpowering that it will listen to every private. The right to privacy is taken away. So I think it's the technology and the idea that it's the economic man is the final man, and I think this pandemic has demolished that. It's demolished. It has pauperized the rich. There are going to be just three or four companies who are in any case there. You know who's, I won't name them. Um, they are the ones who had the head start. The rest will be demolished.
So this pandemic has also, I mean, while it's shown the plight of the people, it's also shown enormous uh, apathy and sometimes brutality on the face of it. One would imagine that this would have given all of us a break from all of this. But we see that institutions have become very, very political, and it's now visibly so. They were always political, but it's now even visibly so. Why do you think that's happening?
Well, the point really is that, you know, to my mind, a human being has the good in him and the brutal in him. And I think this pandemic has unleashed the brutality so much more. But on the other hand, it has unleashed what I'm saying, also the goodness of human beings. I tell you, I mean, if it was not for one DCP called Ravi Teja of Zone 5, who's were doing his duty and who were not looking at those 5,000 migrants as Muslims, but as migrants, and that he actually called us and said, "Look, the state doesn't have the money. Can you, and I'll provide you with the wherewithal to see that they run their community kitchens." One man, one DCP, who's human, who doesn't filter his this thing of from religious identities. He's not scared that he will be pulled up by the powers to be. He takes the risk because his core values are those which which are like constitutional values, and he performs. But those who are scared, and I say, this is the time we really know who are the ones who are human values and who are the ones who are what I call the middle white collar middlemen, who add no value but are only exchanging information from one to the other, not taking stands, not taking decisions.
So you made an important point that doing your own duty is a risky act uh, uh,
Today,
today.
today,
Uh,
today.
and on that note, I want to ask you a question from our audience. So Ashish Vyas is asking, can liberty work in isolation? Can that be balanced with fundamental duties? What is your opinion about fundamental duties?
I think where they both balance each other, but you say it's the chicken and the egg. If you don't have liberty, people will not have duties. But if there is no experience of liberty, there will be what in Gujarati we call a very a pun which says maru su and mare su. Maru su means mera kya, and maru su means isme mera kya. So if the economic man and that human species only economic, and that the only thing that will uh, make him a human being, if that is the ideology, then fundamental duties go to hell. It's all about corruption. It's all about Marushu. And there we go back to school. How much are we investing public investment in education and on constitutional values? How much have we invested in that? To produce those fundamental duties, children who understand that. What is the investment? We want to invest in technologies. We want them to become engineers and doctors, few, so they can go off. But what was education? Was the mind, the spirit, the heart. Are we investing enough in that? Public investment is going down. Education is become a dhanda because it's the economic man. Never should have allowed education to become private. It's the biggest mistake this nation has made. I'm talking of primary education. We never allow that to become, because that's where citizenship happens. Your first 5, 10 years of school make you citizens, and then you start making choices.
So there's a follow-up question from Ashish, who says that how much does India fare in terms of the world regarding democracy? Can you think of another country with so much diversity and still have a functional democracy? So I think the viewer essentially is asking that what more of democracy do you want?
Oh, I would say, I think there I would go by it that say democracy is learned behavior. There is nothing like, so you learn democracy, and I'm of course charitable. I'm an Indian first, and I always say we are, for a nation, every 10 years is 1 year. So we are only 7 years old as a democracy, and at 7 years old, it's time we are about to enter teenage, and if at this stage we don't have the right values, boy, we are going to be in deep trouble because we are 110 crores, we are 120 crores. So it's not fit for democracy, it's fit through democracy. So we need to become fit through democracy. And I'm saying we don't have democracy as long as you will have discrimination based on caste, on gender, on religion, and you are further perpetrating that. That's not becoming fit for democracy, that's becoming fit for theocracy. So I am hopeful. My job is to hope, but I have a right to critique what is happening.
So, for the last 4 weeks, we've been sort of flooded with images of distress, images that have shaken us to the core as society. And appeal after appeal has been made to our institutions, whether it's the government, whether it's the judiciary, whether it's the bureaucrats, to come to the rescue. Uh, at some level, if we were to consider, the non-profit sector and civil society as an institution, they've aided us to the extent possible. But most of our formal designated institutions have just been unavailable. There's been a lot of, sort of question around that, oh, there are food grains available or there is cash available. So there's a lot of economic logic around it. But no one's been able to explain the inaction around it. What is your hypothesis or thesis around the inaction?
No, we are paying the price of centralization in the last 10 years or 8 years. This is when you centralize so much that even central ministers can't take a decision without asking the PMO office, which by the way is full of bureaucrats from Gujarat. You have created a central repository of all knowing one person. And what is needed is great flexibility to take decisions on the ground and powers to use their powers to go and open up those uh, those granaries without having to consult um, through 5 different layers and get the permission. Whatever you ask here when the local, they are just local administration, we are waiting for permission. But the one who wants to do his duty doesn't ask that question, does his duty. So I have hundreds of examples of amazing police officers, bureaucrats who do their duty and not wait for asking. And then there are people who are scared, they're not fit for democracy because they're really waiting for their next promotion. But there are those youngsters who care, who are driven by conscience, who are driven by the basic training of serving the constitution and not serving political masters. They are delivering there out on the field. And my hat's off to them.
So is it also the time to change public narrative? One of the biggest things that's been, the delegitimization of civil society has been one of the highlights of the last 10 years, where civil society has been called anti-national, where they've been called
Absolutely.
inefficient. But really, if there is a standout in terms of any institution, it's civil society. And is it the time to change that narrative? And how could that narrative be changed?
This is the time to collaborate. This is not the time to point fingers. I have done several public interest litigations in the High Court of Gujarat. I have just gone in for one where I have joined a suo moto of the High Court saying, we want to collaborate with the state. And normally all our PILs are asking state to account. We are saying, we want to collaborate. Please tell the state to collaborate. So you're absolutely right. This is the time when everybody has to come together to reimagine a new paradigm of what is needed at the moment in the next 1-2 months, and to reimagine out of lessons learned what the new India should be and the new world should be. Everybody is going to be talking of their self-interest now. You know what China has done? It has delegitimized it's delinked itself with the dollar today. What is Trump doing? He was what all did he do? He threatened, give me hydrochloroquine, otherwise. Wow. So therefore, this is the time the nation state, it does not comprise only of the government, it's business, it's civil society, it's NGOs. We need to, but not sit and think at great levels of in Delhi, but at districts, sub-districts, uh, at state level. This is the place to collaborate and take action, and not just give homilies on Man Ki Baat. I
So
mean, imagine one fellow telling us how we should cover, a prime minister telling us. I mean, is that his job? It's the job of a health worker on the ground to teach people how to wear a mask.
so we have one question from Shloka Kumar from the audience, and he asks, how can we bring these five tenets back into lawmaking? The anti-defection law has killed the idea of being a true representative.
Right. I agree with you. I think we are, unless, I mean, he brings it back to that ultimately it is the political narrative which has to change. Hopefully, hopefully this pandemic will open the eyes of, and they will next time not be bought by money or by promises, but by those who stood by people. And I tell you, there are governments, state governments, which have performed. Jharkhand has performed. Chhattisgarh has performed. It started, they will perform. Let's look at performance. See, there are state governments which have performed. And there are some states which have just panicked. Their leaders were panicked.
So I
So
will.
for me, these 5 tenets of listen, respect, empower, trust, and decentralize, I think we practice them across institutions. This will throw up another kind of leadership. This will throw up another kind of leadership which really truly represents a democratic way of functioning.
So I will. So you're possibly one of the first speakers in this series to talk about a state other than Kerala. So in what ways do you think Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand have performed, and what has aided that performance?
I think a good combination of civil society and state. They've been listening and they've been setting up helpline. They're collaborating with civil society. They are reaching out. So if anybody sends them a mail, there is an answer from this thing. They're trying to find out where their people are. They've decentralized power because you don't have one charismatic leader there. This thing that democracy is, actually democracy is about ordinary people doing ordinary things. It's not about one person doing great things. That's either feudal listing or theocracy. And I think those states which have empowered their people have performed well.
There's another question from the audience. It's a political question, but I will put it to you. What is your assessment of non-BJP state performance in this pandemic, specifically Punjab, Delhi, Odisha, and Kerala?
Um, I think Delhi you have to keep out because Delhi is crazy. I mean, I think it to manage Delhi with this non-clarity of governance makes it a very difficult where health is with one and the police is with the central makes it a difficult case. But I think Punjab has done very well. Um, Maharashtra is doing badly. I mean, you know the statistics. Um, so I think Jharkhand, it began slow, but to my mind, it did well. It picked up a lot. Chhattisgarh is doing very well. West Bengal is struggling because the elections are coming, and I mean, I think again there is this one person who themselves going and drawing lines as to how people should stand. This to me is the critical thing. If does that one person have to go and do that? Then there's a problem of decentralization.
So clearly, the seeds of what we've sown in the last very many years are bearing fruits now in different ways in different states. But we also see that between the center and the state, there is massive helplessness at the state level. The states, despite having elected governments, and no matter how much decentralization that's taken place, for example, in Kerala and Telangana, we hear that salaries of government workers have been slashed, deferred. We hear stories that they'll run out of cash. Um, so
Yeah, but you
despite
agreed on a GST model, and now there is no money, so you can't give it to the state. You're bankrupt. I mean, let's really we are bankrupt. The banks are bankrupt. So you're taxing. I mean, how are you finding the money? There's no money today, and yet you are not telling us that you will do away with the Central Vista project of Delhi, or you will stop the bullet train or not. What are our priorities? I think these are questions to ask. What are our priorities of in public investment, health, education? Yeah, back to basics, and not one person sitting there deciding how it will be spent. Give the money to people who can decide. Even justice. There was the Nyay Panchayat Act, which I was party to actually designing. And when the judges saw that the justice will go away from the justice department to a panchayat department, they came up with a Gram Nyayalaya, which means more judges to go at the gram level. They didn't go beyond the block levels. So, so there have been, and wherever there are a couple of states which have a Nyaya Panchayat, Himachal doing very well. They deal with normal cases, declog the justice system.
Uh, so Shloka Kumar asks that, as you said, education is fundamental. Why have successful governments? Why have governments not successfully invested in it? Is there vested interest or is there some bias?
There is partly vested interest and partly they are not allocating funds and not collaborating. So why should you have one common national system of examinations and this thing? I mean, allow diversity of running your education. This thing. What? I mean, the tribals of Jharkhand need a very different kind of an education system which is linked to their ecosystem. You want to decide in Delhi what the syllabus would be, because at the end of it, you want that fellow will go to a common medical college, and therefore, for that, those 5 people who will go to a common medical college, you will say 50 lakh young people will have to study things which have nothing to do with their reality.
So, underlying all of these ideas is also the principle of trust.
Of
Uh,
trust.
yes, and we've inevitably or irreparably broken the trust of millions of poor people um, uh, who came to our cities and who lived and made our towns. Is there an opportunity to rebuild trust?
What trust is cannot be touched. Trust is something which you, if you invest in what I say results, you, you do what you say, you mean what you say, and you do what you say, then you become trustworthy. You are credible. It's about credibility. We don't trust. I mean, if you don't trust your government, you don't trust the police, you don't trust your institutions, what will happen? So you are up bang on. To me, I've put that as my fourth arena. Building trustworthy institutions needs leadership. And not one, I'm saying leadership, not leaders. The school teacher or the leader in demonstrating leadership. We are talking constantly of leaders. And I keep saying, no, leadership, which is based on certain values.
And my final question to you: as we emerge from this lockdown, we don't know what is in store for us.
I am actually, through all this misery that we are going through, it's a trial by terror. But I think we will come out a very strong nation if we are ready to learn the lessons and the mistakes that we have made and then get on. And I think every institution, whether it's industry, this thing, reimagines the new India that they want. And I go back, I say, you look at the slide which is on, it's let's from the data, information, knowledge, and listen to people and create wisdom. Let wisdom happen and not just ideas. I think wisdom means it is rooted in culture.
So, wisdom rooted in local culture, wisdom rooted in respect for people, and wisdom that can be generated by listening to our own people.
Absolutely.
Uh, Thank you for this message, Gagan. Thank you for
Pleasure.
joining us.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Emma.
And really, thank you and all your listeners. We're all going through difficult times, but I'm sure all of you will demonstrate the grit that this and the values that you have been trained in will come out, and the best of yours will come out. All the best to you.
Thank you, Gagan.
Yeah, pleasure.
Bye.